Hey everyone, my name is Dogly, and in this video I'm going to talk all about Razor and the Song of Broken Pines. There's only a few days left for the Broken Pines weapon banner, so if you're on the fence about summoning for this for your Razor, hopefully this video will help you out. Or at the very least give you a better understanding of the weapon for when it gets its second banner later down the road. I want to start by saying that yes, the Song of Broken Pines is a good weapon for Razor. The biggest question, of course, though, is how good it is and how does it compare to other weapons for Razor. During this video, I'll be primarily comparing it to the prototype Archaic, which is just a generically good 4-star claymore that is very free-to-play friendly. I don't have any other 5-star claymores to compare Broken Pines to for myself, but generally speaking, I've been hearing Broken Pines is on par, if not slightly better than Wolf's Gravestone. That said, if your Razor is already running a 5-star claymore, I think you'd probably get diminishing returns by giving him Broken Pines, and if you're free to play, the investment probably isn't worth it unless you have a second really good DPS Claymore character like Eula or Diluc that you want to help out as well. Alright, first of all, I want to talk about how I like to attack with my Razor before we get into some damage showcases and comparisons. Claymore users generally have the highest amount of hit lag, which is basically the amount of time that it takes to move from one normal attack to the next. The hit lag of a character somewhat parallels the animation that it takes for an attack to be used, and Claymores have some of the longest animations for each swing. The hit lag for Razor's fourth hit in his basic attack sequence is by far the greatest amount. Some people prefer to only use the first 3 attacks in his basic attack sequence to not deal with that greater hit lag. But for me, I don't like to do this primarily because his 4th attack gives the highest damage output. So instead of canceling his sequence before his 4th attack, I personally prefer to do a jump cancel after his 4th attack hits, which will remove at least some of the hit lag for that 4th hit. The next thing I want to talk about is movement speed. Razor's ultimate will boost his movement speed by considerable amounts, and the Song of Broken Pines also boosts movement speed. However, the text of Broken Pines says that its boosts will not stack with boosts of the same type. So I've gotten a few questions on previous videos if this is actually the case. And unfortunately, my testing results have been rather inconclusive. I did a frame-by-frame comparison on a few different attack sequences with Razor using his ultimate, both when he has the Broken Pines Sigils boost and then when he doesn't. To do this, I decided to mark out key moments at the start and end of Razor's attack sequence to get clear reference points. The first frame that I use to start my counter is the moment when Razor's sword reappears in his hand after activating his ultimate. Here we can see that on this frame, the sword is not in his hand, but on the very next frame, it is. The same thing happens during the middle of his ultimate when we're doing that jump cancel. His sword will leave his hand, but it will reappear upon starting the next cycle of his attack sequence. To determine which frame to stop my counting, I decided to use the moment when the Soul Companion Claw swipe first appears behind Razor's back, which is right before the 4th hit in the sequence. This movement is technically, before that 4th hit, but I think it's the most clear visual marker to use that leads to counting the frames more easily. After doing this a few times, I then input the frame numbers into a spreadsheet for comparison. And well, like I said before, the results were inconclusive. Half of the time, the number of frames between Razor's ultimate with and without the Broken Pines boost was the exact same, suggesting that the Broken Pines boost does indeed not stack. However, half of the time the frame count was very slightly lower than the Broken Pines boost than without it, suggesting that the boost might actually stack. While I did a relatively small sample size with this, I ultimately concluded that spending all the time and resources to do it again would be a little bit pointless because the difference that I've seen was definitely within human error of just having slightly different times of pressing the buttons, as well as within the error of normal input lag. Since I'm only using a refined 1 Broken Pines and I can't afford to get to R5, I also think that limits my testing. R1 only gives a 12% movement speed boost, whereas R5 gives a 24% boost. So getting that 24% boost might be able to give us a more clear understanding of whether my small differences were just because of human error or input lag, or if they were because of the boosts actually stacking. But for comparison, my Razor is receiving a 37% boost from his ultimate, which is hugely visible in comparisons between his non-ultimate frames and his ultimate frames on this spreadsheet. One thing that I found surprising at first was that even though this was a 37% boost, the frame suggested that it was practically a 50% speed increase, going from 180 frames to 120 frames. But this itself goes against the common theory that hit lag makes attack speed gains lower than they otherwise would be. However, another reason for these slightly elevated speeds is simply that I had to change how I counted frames between ult comparisons and non-ult comparisons. On the non-ult frames, I still use the moment when Razor's sword appears in his hand to start my counting, but to end my counting, I use the moment when Razor's claymore causes an impact circle. When Razor's using his ultimate, the Soul Companion obscures this impact circle, so I had to use the slightly earlier moment in the ultimate of when the claw appears behind Razor's back before the 4th hit. And of course, when he's not in his ultimate form, the Soul Companion claw won't appear at all. So because of that, there are slightly different times when I'm ending my frame counting. I'm basically just going with whatever is the most clear visual clue. And in both cases, between ultimate and non-ultimate, the end of the cycle, the clue changes a lot, so I have to change that a little bit as well. Ultimately, I don't think I have the resources to see if the Pines boost does or doesn't stack with Razor's ultimate attack speed boost. But I will say this. If a Pines R1 boost does indeed stack with his ultimate, the stacking is so small and negligible that it doesn't really matter. We're talking about a 1/10 of a second difference compared to Razor's ult, which shaves an entire full second off. So someone with R5 might be able to get less negligible results, but again, I can't be the one to test that. Alright, so let's move on to some more fun damage showcases. To get a good comparison of how much I personally improved my Razor by getting the Song of Broken Pines, I tested him out in 3 different spots. First up, we'll be fighting the Cryo Regisvine. My team has buffs from Bennett's ultimate and debuffs against enemies with Zhongli's shield. Zhongli is also running the Tenacity of the Millilith set, which gives his team a 20% attack percent buff if his pillar hits enemies continuously. However, the Cryo Regisvine just doesn't allow his pillar to stay on the field, so that part of the artifact buff for him is not in effect for this particular fight. I then recorded the numbers that Razor was getting when using Broken Pines compared to when he was using Prototype Archaic. The biggest Archaic number that I got was 19,465, and the biggest Pines number I got without the Sigil boost was around 23,000, but the biggest Pines number with that boost was 24,689. So from biggest number to biggest number, this looks to be roughly a 25% damage increase from Archaic to Pines. However, we also have to factor in that once every 15 seconds, the prototype Archaic procs an additional hit, which does raise its damage output overall, and we have to figure that it takes one attack cycle before Razor's Pines will even receive the boosts from the sigils. For the sake of the length of Razor's ultimate and the practicality of wanting to switch Razor out to use supports, I decided on finding an average based on 4 attack cycles would be the most practical. 5 attack cycles might be feasible as well, but I wanted to be on the lower end so that the calculations feel more like actual gameplay instead of intense min-maxing. After these average calculations, I found that Broken Pines R1 does about 18% more damage than Archaic R1, and if we're comparing R1 Pines to R5 Archaic, though, this would only be about a 10% damage increase, which admittedly is less than I was expecting. Up next, I wanted to test Razor in the Abyss with some big numbers as well. To do this, I added Venti to the team to test Plunge Damage, which is Razor's highest attack value. I do have Albedo on my main account, where the Plunge Damage could be even more boosted with his Elevator, but sadly, I don't have Albedo on this account. First, I went to floor 11, where there is a 75% physical damage buff. Here, Zhongli's Tenacity of the Millilith set can actually be used for that attack percent buff as well, but sometimes I'm moving around in weird ways where I can't see if it activates, so I tried a few times just to make sure I could get shots with the boost. First, I used Broken Pines and got max damage of 56,954. Next, I used Archaic and got 45,881, but I calced some non-crits as well, and I don't think I ever got the Millilith boost with a crit. So to compensate for that, I upped those non-crits to their crit damage equivalents by multiplying them by 2.332, since my additional crit damage currently on my Razor is 132.2%. This gave me an Archaic best number of 48,603. This ultimately means that Pines here has a 17% damage increase compared to Archaic. Of course, though, with this plunge testing, it is possible to get the sigil boost from Pines, which I did not get here, for an even greater increase. But I also think that's sort of unrealistic in normal play, since we're fighting on a timer with all of these different boosts that are happening on the field. Lastly, I tested Razor in floor 9, where I got a 40% attack boost. The overall damage here was less than the huge boost from floor 11, but comparing an attack boost compared to the physical damage boost was still important. Here, Prototype Archaic scored a plunge crit of 36,948. Meanwhile, the Pines hit was 44,750. This time, Pines dealt 21% more damage, again without the sigil boost. And this is all because of the different boosts. Since Pine has a crazy high base attack, it means that any attack percent boosts Razor gets will lead to damage at a higher rate compared to attack percent boost with a weaker base attack weapon. This is why I've also been hearing that some people with Pines opt to go for an attack percentage goblet instead of a physical damage one, simply because Pines really benefits from attack percent. For me, I am running a physical percent goblet since I have pretty good substats on it with 34% crit rate. However, if I ever get a good attack percent goblet, I definitely plan on testing it out more. This also means that more attack percent boosting team support that you have, the higher a Razor with Pines will start to eclipse the damage of others without Pines. On my team during testing, I was not running a full piece Noblesse set, but that would have been another great way to get an additional 20% attack gain to Razor. Overall, Broken Pines gave my own Razor about a 17 to 21% damage boost. I was expecting a little bit more, but I think in order to fully maximize my damage, I still need to invest in better artifacts to see even more gains. Broken Pines is undoubtedly a good weapon for Razor, but if you already have a 5-star Claymore or even an R5 Archaic, your own damage increases will be a lot less. I'm definitely having fun with the weapon, but I am still a little salty with how many pulls it took to get it. In terms of an overall damage showcase, please keep in mind here that I main Razor on my second account, not my main account, which means that I've just had less time to invest in resources like resin to get amazing artifacts. I hope this video helped people out who are considering summoning or just wanted to see some comparisons. And thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.